Okay.
And yeah,
For 6 months, the messengers go forth from Nisan because of Pesach, for Av because of the fast, for Ela because of Rosh Hashanah, for Tishrei because of the proper determination of the holidays, for Kislev because of Chanukah, and for Adar because of Purim. And when the temple was in existence, they went forth also for Iyar because of the mind of Pesach. For 2 months, the witnesses may desecrate the Sabbath, for Nisan and for Tishrei, and on them the messengers go forth to Syria, and on them they fix the holy days. And when the temple was in existence, they desecrated even for all of them because of the determination of the time of the sacrifice. Whether it was the new moon, the new moon was clearly visible, or whether it was not clearly visible, they would desecrate the Shabbos because of it. Yossi says if it was clearly visible, they would not desecrate the Shabbos because of it. Hey,
okay. מעשה שעברו יותר מ-40 זוג. So lots of witnesses were coming to give testimony about the new moon. And in fact, there were more than 40 pairs of witnesses were on their way to Jerusalem to give their testimony. And Ve'ikvan Rabbi Akiva belud. So Rabbi Akiva was in Lud, and he saw these people coming through on a Shabbos or a Yom Tov. Um, and he thought, come on, we don't need all these people. Why are we having all this mass Chilul Shabbos going on? So it was on Shabbos, of course, uh,
right.
because you wouldn't be having Eid HaChodesh on Yom Tov typically, unless it's Rosh Hashanah. But it was on Shabbos, and he said, like, you stay here. We don't need everyone to go. Shalach lo Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Gamliel was upset with him. He said, Im akeva ta'is harabim nimtzeisa machshilan la'asid lavo. You are discouraging people from coming to give testimony in future. If you tell them that they can't come now, then they're going to say, "Oh, what I need this for in my life," and then we're going to have people not coming to give Eid HaKodesh. Rather, you have a heter to be Mechalel Shabbos to come, and it's part of the mitzvah that you have to come and give Eidus, even if it's on Shabbos, and we cannot discourage people, even if we know that we've got enough witnesses. We must let them come. And the halacha follows Rabban Gamliel. Uh, Av ubeno shirau es hachodesh. Now, we have a thing with witnesses that close relatives aren't allowed to testify together. Okay, so if a father and his son both saw the new moon, yelchu, let them go. Lo שמצרפין זה עם זה, not that they can join with each other to give edus, אלא שאם ייפסל אחד מהן, but if one of them has an issue, uh, that the court says, no, sorry, you can't give testimony. You know, there are other issues other than being related that can disqualify a person from giving testimony. יצטרף השני עם אחר, so then the other person will join with somebody else who came, and that will also be good enough. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Avu beno v'chol ha'krovin kasherin la'edus hachodesh. Rabbi Shimon says that this is not like other edus where you cannot have relatives giving testimony. Rather, you can have close relatives giving testimony for this particular case. Amar Rabbi Yossi, um, there was a maser with Tuvia Harofe, certain fellow. He was a doctor called Tovia. Shirai Sachodesh B'Yerushalayim. Who he saw the new moon um, in Yerushalayim. He and his son and his freed slave. So all three of them are fully Jewish. And a freed slave automatically becomes Jewish. And he came to give Eidos. The Kiblu HaKohanim Osoves Beno Upaslu Es Avdo. So the Kohanim who were there were very into Yichus. And they said, look, Eid Chodesh, we're prepared to accept relatives, but the Ebed Meshachar is like he doesn't have any yichus. He's a convert. He's got the din of a convert, and he doesn't have the same line that we can rely on him, and therefore we don't accept his testimony. Sheba'u lifnei Beis Din, however, they got to the Beis Din to actually give the edus. Kiblu osov es avdo upaslu es beno. They accepted him and his slave because they're unrelated to each other, but they said, sorry, son cannot testify with a father. So that turns out is the halacha, like not like Rabbi Shimon, not like the Kohanim, but like the Tanakama, that it's just like any other edus. You cannot have relatives, but there's no issue with a freed slave giving testimony. So who cannot give testimony? Mishna ches, eilu heina psulin. Who cannot give testimony? Hamasachet bekubia, one who gambles, a gambler. And now this is talking about where somebody is actually um, he does this with all of his in his uh, main time. This is how he makes money is by gambling. And there are many reasons why we can speculate why this is. I mean, speculate. There are lots of reasons given as to why. First of all, because he's not contributing anything to society. A gambler does not add any value to society. All he's doing is taking money off other people. Secondly, the odds are not in your favor when you're gambling. Um, you have at best you've got even odds of coming out with money, and at worst, if you're playing against the house, then you've got worse odds. So if he's making a living out of it, then we suspect that he's dishonest. And the third thing is that it's a gezel derabanan. When people gamble, when they play cards for money or whatever, they're not expecting to lose. So when you take the money off them, it's kind of he feels like that was not what I intended, and you're taking money off him that he's not happy with, and that's gezel derabanan.
Especially those guys who in New York City have those stands where they have the cups,
Oh
the three
yeah,
cups.
yeah. What's it called? Three card Monty. They have that.
Yeah. That's why I don't see how many from people go to Las Vegas and they gamble all this money. The guys, the
So I
pictures
think
of
I think I'll be honest that when it comes to like Las Vegas and stuff like that, I think most people are realistic about the fact that they're not expecting to win. They're going for entertainment because it's a vibe, it's a whole scene, and like there's that small chance that you'll hit the jackpot. And people go in and they they've set aside whatever $100 or whatever to play with and call it the evening's entertainment. And if they lose it, no, they weren't expecting to win. But when somebody spends all their time gambling,
all
that's when
different
there's an
story,
issue.
right?
It's not this is not we're talking when you're talking about casual gambling, like going to Las Vegas for an evening for entertainment. That's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you don't lose your status as an aide. Okay, Malve Beribis, people who lend money with interest. Of course, that's against the Torah. And both he and the person who borrows lose their kashrus as aidim because they have violated a fundamental in that it's interesting that this is considered a fundamental that in terms of fundamental breach of contract with the Kadosh Baruch Hu that you lend money for interest. I guess because it's his way of making parnasa that's in doubt. Because if we just take somebody who's a mumay l'te'avon, he's otherwise shomer mitzvahs, but he's got this yetzer hara for calamari. And he sneaks a bit of calamari on the side. You can argue back and forth as to whether he's kosher as an aid or not, but there's nothing in the Torah that says that somebody who eats non-kosher loses his cheskas kashrus
Okay.
for edus. But they do
Right.
say that about malvei beribus because that's actually something where he's making a panasa out of an avera. Okay, mafrichayonim, the people who fly birds. This is it's pigeon racing, and it kind of is the same category as Masachek Bakubia, people who play with dice. Um, Sochrei Shvius, people who are merchants of Shvius produce, and this again, it's an avera, and he's making money out of it, and that it represents something that's fundamentally dishonest. So we don't trust him for Adis. And Avadim. Avadim are have the same din as a woman in pretty much every respect. They are pater from mitzvahs aseh she'ezman grama. So as we saw with Tavi, who the
Right.
slave who sat under the bed in the sukkah fairly recently. So we also have this by Adus that a slave is possible Adus just other than things that a woman is allowed to give testimony about. So. So just like a woman is allowed to give testimony about simple factual matters. So she can say, oh, what are the ingredients in this food? And you can rely on a woman when she says that the food is kosher.
Mhm.
right? She's got that neman as well. Eid echad neman beisurin. You can believe her when she tells you that her kitchen's kosher. And if you have two witnesses who come and say that uh, they saw let's say that they're coming and giving Adis about a murder, and they said that they saw what's his name the murderer pick up something and go and slam it into Fred's back, and they didn't see what it was, but the woman can say, I saw what he picked up, it was a knife. So they've accepted the aiders from the two men who gave the facts over there, and she can come and give the supplemental aiders on a point of fact. So I'm not sure if I may be wrong about the details about that, but there are cases where a woman is allowed to give aiders that's not directly implicating somebody in something, but when she adds a fact into the equation, then she is actually accepted. Okay, your general rule is kol edus she'ein ha'isha kasher ela af hein einan kasher la. So that's just saying out explicitly what I just said, that
So,
avad are on the same level as women when it comes to testimony. Okay,
okay.
back to Beta.
Gimel Dalet. If a firstling fell into a pit, Rabbi Yehuda says an expert goes down and sees if it has a blemish, he may bring it up and slaughter it. If not, he may not slaughter it. Rabbi Shimon says if the blemish was not perceived on the previous day, it is not considered prepared. An animal died, one may not move it from its place. It once occurred, and they asked Reb Tarfon about it and about challah that became unclean. And he went to the house of study and asked, and they said to him, one may not move them from their place. They may not allot shares of an animal from the outside of Yom, but they may not. I'm sorry, they may not allot shares of an animal from the outside of Yom, but they may not allot shares of it from before Yom, and may slaughter and divide among them. Rabbi Yehuda says one may weigh meat against a utensil or against a chopper, but the Chachamim say one may not use scales at all. And Yoma, okay, Zion Aleph. Kohen Gadol came to read. If he wished to read wearing his linen vestments, he may read, and if not, he would read while wearing his own white robe. The attendant of the synagogue takes a Torah scroll and gives it to the head of the synagogue. The head of the synagogue gives it to the deputy Kohen Gadol, and the deputy gives it to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol stands up, accepts the scroll, and reads while standing. He reads from Akbei Mos in the portion that begins but on the 10th. Then he rolls up the Torah scroll, puts it in his bosom, and says, more than I have read to you is written here, and he recites by heart from the book of Numbers beginning on the 10th. Then he recites over 8 brachas for the Torah, for the sacrificial service, for the thanksgiving, for the forgiving of sins, for the temple separately, for Israel separately, for Yerushalayim separately, and for the Calm separately, and for the rest of the prayer. But one who sees the Kohen Gadol when he reads cannot see the ox and the he-goat as they are burned. And one who sees the ox and the he-goat as they are burned cannot see the Kohen Gadol when he reads, not because it may not, but because the distance between them was great and both services were performed at the same time. And one more. If he read the Torah and the linen vestments and then washed his hands and feet, undressed, went down into the mikveh and immersed himself, he came up and dried himself. They brought him the golden vestments. He dressed and washed his hands and feet, and then he went out, sacrificed his ram and the ram of the people and the 7 unblemished male sheep in the first year. This is the opinion of Reb Eliezer. Reb Akiva says they were brought with the daily morning offerings as well as the ox for a burnt offering, but the he-goat, which is done outside, were brought with the daily offering, daily afternoon offering. Okay, so here and
Ervin.
then okay, base hay. Additionally, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, a garden or a copper that is 70 cubits and a fraction by 70 cubits and a fraction that is and is closed uh, by a fence 10 tefachim high, we may carry within it, provided it contains a watchman's hut or a dwelling or it is near a city. Rabbi Yehuda said, even if it contains only a cistern, a ditch, or a cave, he may carry in it. Rabbi Akiva says, even if it contains none of these, one may carry within it, provided that its area is 70 cubits and a fraction by 70 cubits and a fraction. Reb Eliezer says if its length exceeds its width by even 1 cubit, we may not carry in it. Yossi says even if its length is double its width, we may carry in it. Said Rabbi Eli, I have heard from Rabbi Eliezer that even if it is in a base core, and I have also heard from him that if one of the residents of a courtyard forgot and did not participate in the Erev, his house is forbidden to him with regard to bringing in and taking out of it, but permitted to them. I also heard from him that one fulfills his obligation on Pesach with Akravayim but I made the rounds of the students and they sought corroboration, yet I did not find it. Any foodstuff may be used to make an Arab and a shittuk except water and salt. Any food may be purchased with the tight foods, funds except water and salt. One who vowed to abstain from nourishment is permitted water and salt. And one make an error for a Nazir with wine, and for an Israelite with truma. Sumka says with non-truma. If a Kohen for a Kohen in a base kapras, but Yehuda says even in a great yard because he may go out and make a partition and eat. Okay.
Aye.
All right. And we are on to no, Paya. Paya. We have here we go. If a person collects sheaves to make hats or a kumsut or a cake or sheaves, it is not liable to shikaka. If taken from there to the threshing floor, he is liable to shikaka. If a person collects sheaves from the heap, he is liable to shikaka. From there to the threshing floor, he is not liable to shikaka. This is the general rule. Whoever collects sheaves to take from a place that marks the conclusion of their work, it is liable to shikaka from there to the threshing floor. It is not liable to shikaka to a place that does not mark the conclusion of the work. It is not liable to shikaka from there to the threshing floor. It is liable to shikaka. Sorry. Okay. But Shammai says the renunciation of ownership in favor of the poor is a valid renunciation of ownership. And Basil says it is not a valid renunciation of ownership unless it's declared ownerless in favor of the rich, also as a Shemitah. If all the sheaves of a field are in a cob, each and one of them is each and one is for 4 cobs, and he forgot it, Beis Shammai says it is not shikaka, and Beis Hillel says it is shikaka. The sheaf that is close to a stone face, or a heap to cattle or to implements, and he forgot it, Beis Shammai says it is not shikaka, and Beis Hillel says it is shikaka.
Aye.
Okay. And Balaam. Okay, Aleph Vav. There are 10 levels of holiness. Eretz Israel is holier than all the other lands. And what constitutes its holiness? That we bring it from the Omer, Bekurim, and the 2 loaves, which we did not bring from all the lands. Walled cities are holier than it, and the Mitzarim are sent out of it, and a corpse may be carried about within these cities until they desire. But once it is taken out, it may not be brought back. Within the walls of Yerushalayim is holier than that we may eat Kedoshim, Kalim, and Masa Sheni there. The Temple Mount is holier than it, and that Zavos, needles, and women who have given birth are not permitted to enter there. The Chel is holier than it, and that non-Jews and all people contaminated with corpse tumor are not permitted to enter there. A woman's courtyard is holier than it, and that a Tevel Yom is not permitted to enter there, but they are not obligated to bring a kontos offering for entering it. The Israelites' courtyard is holier than it, in that a Makusa Kaporim is not permitted to enter there, and they are obligated to bring a kontos offering for entering it. The Kohan's courtyard is holier than it, that Israelites are not permitted to enter there except when they are needed for leading, slaughtering, and for waving. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And Baba Basha. Okay, Aleph Vav. We do not divide a courtyard unless there are 4 cubits for each one, nor do we divide a field unless there are 9 cobs for each one. Rabbi Yehuda says unless there are 9 half cobs for each one, nor do we divide a garden unless there is a half cob for each one. Rabbi Akiva says a quarter cob, nor do we divide a salon, nor a hall, nor a dovecote, nor a cloak, nor a bathhouse, nor an olive press, unless there is enough for this one and enough for that one. This is the rule. Anything which can be divided and still retain its name, we divide, but if not, we do not divide it. When they do not both consent, and when they both consent, they may divide with even less than this. However, they may not divide holy scriptures even if they both consent. A man may not dig a pit near the pit of another, nor a ditch, nor a vault, nor a water canal, nor a launderer's pool, unless he distances them 3 handbreadths from the other's wall and plasters them with lime. One must distance olive refuse, manure, salt, lime, and stones 3 handbreadths from the wall of another and plaster it with lime. One must distance seeds, a plow, and urine 3 handbreadths from the wall. One must distance a mill there, 3 handbreadths as is measured from the lower millstone, which is 4 is measured from the upper millstone, and an oven by 3 handbreadths is measured from the base, which is 4 is measured from the rim. A man may not place an oven in a house unless there is a height of 4 cubits above it. If he wished to place it in the upper story, there must be a layer of plaster 3 handbreadths thick beneath it. For a stove, 1 handbreadth. If it has caused damage, he must pay for the damage. Reb Shimon says if they stated all these measurements only so that if it caused damage, they should be exempt from paying.
Okay. That's it.
All right, great. Okay. Have a good day.
You
Enjoy.
too.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
What?
Thank you.